What does it take to rule one of the world's most secretive and oppressive regimes? Welcome to the inner workings of North Korea's dictatorial rule. Embark on a journey through a land enigmatic and intriguing, its citizens living under the iron fist of a single family, the Kim dynasty. To fully grasp the present, we must take a step back into history, tracing our path back to the emergence of backed by the Soviet Union. His first order of business, the creation of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, a nation far from democratic, hinged on the pillars of Juche, a doctrine emphasizing self-reliance, militarism, and the absolute authority of the leader. This doctrine, far from being just an ideology, was a potent instrument of control, an effective method to secure the inhabitants' unwavering allegiance to the regime. But Kim Il-sung's strategies didn't end there. He meticulously curated a cult of personality, presenting himself as an infallible deity, a divine entity whose wisdom and valor were beyond question. His image became ubiquitous. His words, the law, his name uttered with deference. While there were challengers to his rule lurking in the peripheries, Kim Il-sung squashed them with ruthless proficiency, launching purges that wiped out anyone he perceived as a threat. Such consolidation of power ensured that Kim Il-sung's reign was absolute, his control unshakable. As we delve deeper into North Korea's enigma, we see a country shaped in the likeness of one man, a man who adopted ideology, propaganda, and fear as tools to cement his rule, a man who transformed a war-scarred terrain into a bastion of seclusion. As the Iron Curtain descended, the stage was set for a dynasty of unchallenged authority. This narrative will explore the psychology of Kim Jong-un and his predecessors, shedding light on the unique style of authoritarian control that continues to captivate global curiosity. Having laid the groundwork for an unchallenged rule, Kim Il-sung took a step further to consolidate his power. The Korean War, a brutal conflict between North and South Korea, served as a crucible for his burgeoning dictatorship. As the North invaded the South, backed by the military might of the Soviet Union and China, Kim Il-sung saw an opportunity to unify the Korean peninsula under his rule. Despite the conflict ending in a stalemate, the war served its purpose in the North. It allowed Kim Il-sung to solidify his control over the country, using the war as a rallying cry for national unity and loyalty. The war also served as a backdrop for Kim Il-sung's early strategies of propaganda and purges. He used the conflict as a pretext to eliminate opposition, purging those who threatened his rule and repressing any dissent. He painted his opponents as traitors, as enemies of the state who sought to undermine the unity and strength of the North Korean people. This strategy of fear-mongering was effective, as it instilled a deep fear of dissent among the populace. Those who dared to challenge Kim Il-sung's rule were swiftly dealt with, their fate serving as a stark warning to others. Propaganda was another tool in Kim Il-sung's arsenal, one that he wielded with deftness. He controlled the narrative, shaping the people's perception of the world and their place in it. He presented himself as the savior of the North Korean people, the only one capable of leading them to prosperity and victory. His image was omnipresent, his words echoing through the streets and homes of North Korea. Through propaganda, Kim Il-sung not only maintained control over the country, but also managed to cultivate a cult of personality, one that would outlive him and continue to shape North Korea long after his death. As the dust from the Korean War settled, a new North Korea emerged, one that was firmly under the control of Kim Il-sung. The foundation of fear had been laid, the roots of the North Korean dictatorship firmly planted. From these roots would grow a tree of tyranny, one that would cast its shadow over the North Korean people for decades to come. As the roots of the North Korean dictatorship took hold, a powerful tool was employed to further strengthen the regime's iron grip on the nation, the cult of personality. The Kim family, beginning with Kim Il-sung, ingeniously used propaganda to construct a godlike image of themselves. They were no longer mere men, but deities, omniscient and omnipotent, to be revered and worshipped. This deification was propagated through a carefully manipulated media landscape. Newspapers, radio, and television broadcasts were controlled by the state, ensuring a constant stream of propaganda that elevated the Kims to divine status. Each news piece was a hymn to the Kim family's greatness, each broadcast a sermon on their infallibility. Education was another instrument in shaping the cult of personality. From a young age, North Koreans were taught to regard the Kims as their saviors. The national curriculum was designed to instill unwavering loyalty and devotion to the leaders. Lessons revolved around the supposed heroic exploits of the Kims, while textbooks were filled with their portraits and quotes. The physical landscape of North Korea was also transformed into a monument to the Kim family's grandeur. Statues of Kim Il-sung and later Kim Jong-il were erected across the country, towering over cities and towns, a constant reminder of their omnipresence. The psychological impact of this pervasive propaganda was profound. The constant glorification of the Kim family, combined with the isolation of North Koreans from external information, created a reality distortion field. The people were indoctrinated into a state of unquestioning obedience and loyalty to the regime. Any thoughts of dissent were stifled, replaced by a deep-seated fear and reverence for the Kim family. Thus, through the cult of personality, the Kim family achieved a level of psychological control over the nation, ensuring the survival of their regime for generations to come. As the cult of personality took hold, another insidious mechanism was being constructed in the shadows. This was the Ministry of State Security, North Korea's secret police. An omnipresent entity, it was tasked with maintaining the regime's control over the nation. Its agents were everywhere, watching, listening, and reporting. No one was safe from their scrutiny. A misplaced word, a questioning look, even a moment's hesitation could be interpreted as dissent and reported to the authorities. The ministry's surveillance reached into every corner of North Korean society. Homes, workplaces, schools, even places of worship were infiltrated by its agents. They were your neighbors, your co-workers, your friends. This bred a climate of fear and suspicion. Trust was a luxury few could afford. Family members turned on each other, friends betrayed friends, all for fear of being accused of disloyalty. This fear was further accentuated by the regime's use of forced labor camps, known as Kwanliso. These were places of unspeakable horror, where political prisoners and their families were sent to be re-educated. The conditions were brutal, with inmates subjected to long hours of hard labor, inadequate food and medical care, and frequent physical and psychological abuse. The mere mention of these camps was enough to instill fear in the hearts of the people, making them more compliant, more docile. Through this network of surveillance and intimidation, the regime was able to keep a tight leash on its population. The fear of betrayal, the threat of punishment, these were powerful tools in the hands of the dictatorship. They served not only to suppress dissent, but also to fuel loyalty to the regime. In a society where trust was a liability, the only safe place to pledge allegiance was to the state and its leaders. Between the climate of fear and the rise of a new leader, an ideology was being fostered. This was the philosophy of Juche, or self-reliance. Introduced by Kim Il-sung, the Juche ideology became a cornerstone of North Korean governance. It was a philosophy that preached independence from the global community, a narrative that served as the regime's justification for its isolationist policies. The Juche ideology was propagated as a symbol of North Korean resilience and strength. It painted a picture of a nation standing alone against the world, surviving and thriving despite the odds. This narrative was incredibly effective in garnering public support for the regime's policies. It allowed the dictatorship to frame international sanctions and diplomatic pressures as attacks on the nation's sovereignty, thereby further demonizing the international community in the eyes of the people. The Juche ideology also served another more insidious purpose. It made the population wholly dependent on the regime. By cutting off international aid and trade, the regime ensured that the people had no choice but to rely on it for their survival. This dependence was then exploited to reinforce the regime's control over the nation. The people were told that their survival was tied to the survival of the regime, thereby creating a sense of shared destiny. This narrative of self-reliance and shared destiny was a powerful tool in the hands of the dictatorship. It served to justify their isolationist policies, to bolster their control over the population, and to shield the regime from international scrutiny. The philosophy of Juche was the backbone of North Korea's strategic isolation, a shield that protected the dictatorship from the prying eyes of the world. Amidst the strategic isolation and the rise of the new leader, North Korea made a bold and defiant move: the pursuit of nuclear weapons. This wasn't merely a show of power, it was a calculated decision rooted in fear and the quest for prestige. The nuclear program served as the ultimate deterrent, a formidable shield against any external threats. The Kim regime instilled a widespread belief that their nuclear arsenal was the only thing standing between the nation and an imminent invasion. This fear was used to justify the regime's heavy investment in nuclear technology, despite the nation's crumbling economy and the people's suffering. The nuclear weapons were not just tools of defense, They were also instruments of negotiation. North Korea's nuclear prowess was used as a bargaining chip on the international stage. The regime would promise to halt or dismantle their nuclear program in exchange for aid or political concessions, only to renege on their promises once their demands were met. This repeated cycle of provocations and negotiations further isolated the nation, but it also allowed the regime to maintain a semblance of control over their international interactions. The possession of nuclear weapons also served another purpose. It was a source of national pride and prestige. The regime used their nuclear success to foster a sense of nationalistic fervor, painting a picture of a small but mighty nation capable of standing up to the world's superpowers. This narrative further solidified the people's belief in their leader's invincibility and the nation's resilience. In essence, North Korea's nuclear program was a multifaceted tool, a shield, a bargaining chip, and a symbol of national pride. It became a central pillar of the regime's survival strategy, a testament to their ability to instill fear and command respect, both at home and abroad. Even within the seemingly invincible fortress of the Kim dynasty, the walls echoed with whispers of distrust and paranoia. The leaders, despite their godlike portrayal, were not immune to the gnawing fear of betrayal, and so they resorted to purges as a means to quell their anxieties and maintain their iron grip on power. One of the most notable purges was the execution of Jang Song-taek, the uncle of Kim Jong-un. Jang was a prominent figure within the government, often seen as the second most powerful man in North Korea. His close ties to the Kim family did not spare him from the wrath of his nephew. Accused of treachery and corruption, Jang was publicly arrested, tried, and executed. This shocking event served as a chilling reminder of the absolute power wielded by the Kim regime and the harsh consequences of perceived disloyalty. Jang's execution was not an isolated incident. It was part of a broader pattern of purges, aimed at weeding out potential threats and consolidating power within the Kim family. High-ranking officials and military leaders were routinely arrested, purged, or executed on charges ranging from corruption to plotting against the state. This climate of fear and paranoia defined the leadership style of the Kim dynasty. The leadership fostered an environment where trust was a luxury few could afford. Loyalty was constantly tested, and the price of failure was often fatal. The purges also served to reinforce the narrative of the Kim family's omnipotence. They were a stark demonstration of the regime's ability to command absolute obedience and quell any signs of dissent. In the House of Kim, power was absolute, fear was pervasive, and survival was a game of loyalty and silence. Following the era of paranoia and purges, a new chapter unfolded under the leadership of Kim Jong-un, the youngest son of Kim Jong-il. Amidst the looming shadows of his predecessors, Kim Jong-un faced a unique challenge, modernizing the Hermit Kingdom while ensuring the preservation of his absolute power. As the world hurtled forward, North Korea found itself grappling with the need to adapt and progress. Kim Jong-un initiated a series of reforms aimed at revitalizing the stagnant economy. These included measures to boost domestic production and encourage foreign investment. The nation, under his rule, began to embrace technology, with smartphones, computers, and the internet making their way into the hands of the elite. Yet this modernization came with its own set of risks. The introduction of technology threatened to expose the populace to outside influences. Smuggled media and limited internet access offered glimpses into the world beyond North Korea's tightly guarded borders. This exposure posed a significant threat to the regime's stranglehold on information and control over the narrative. The question then arose: how does a regime rooted in absolute control adapt to the modern world without loosening its iron grip? The Kim dynasty found itself walking a tightrope, attempting to balance the need for progress with the preservation of power. The government responded with a dual strategy. On one hand, it promoted technological advancement for economic growth. On the other hand, it tightened its control over information, censoring the internet and cracking down on smuggled media. The regime also continued its robust propaganda campaign, reinforcing the cult of personality around Kim Jong-un and the narrative of North Korea's self-reliance and superiority. This delicate balance between modernization and control reflects the ongoing struggle within the Kim dynasty. As North Korea inches towards the future, the regime faces the daunting task of maintaining power in a rapidly changing world. The dilemma of modernization, power versus progress, continues to define the rule of Kim Jong-un, shaping the trajectory of the Hermit Kingdom in the 21st century. Following the narrative of power versus progress, we delve into the intricate dance North Korea plays on the international stage. This scene is about manipulation and diplomacy, a delicate balance of provocation and negotiation that the regime uses to its advantage. The world watches as North Korea oscillates between aggression and conciliation, a strategic play to gain international leverage. Kim Jong-un, like his predecessors, is an expert at this game. He flexes his military muscles, conducts missile tests, and makes belligerent threats, only to pivot and extend an olive branch when the international pressure mounts. This unpredictable behavior keeps the world on edge, ensuring that North Korea remains a focal point on the global stage. The relationships with China, Russia, and the United States significantly influence these diplomatic maneuvers. China and Russia, traditional allies of North Korea, often act as buffers, softening the blow of international sanctions and providing economic relief. Meanwhile, the relationship with the United States is a complex tapestry of hostility, mistrust, and intermittent dialogue. The Kim regime often uses the perceived threat from the United States to justify its nuclear ambitions and to rally nationalistic fervor at home. However, these relationships are not static. The regime adjusts its tactics based on the changing geopolitical climate, always with the goal of preserving its power and control. Despite the external pressures and the internal challenges of modernization, the Kim dynasty continues to manipulate global perceptions, using diplomacy as another tool in its arsenal. As we transition into the era of Kim Jong-un, this dance on the diplomatic tightrope becomes even more intricate, setting the stage for the next chapter in North Korea's history. In this era of uncertainty and turbulence, you might wonder, what keeps the dictator in power? The answer lies in a complex web of psychological and systemic factors that uphold the dictator's authority. At the heart of the regime's control is the loyalty program, a meticulously designed system that rewards the regime's most faithful servants. High-ranking officials, military officers, and party members enjoy privileges and benefits unheard of by the average North Korean citizen. They live in better houses, have access to quality education for their children, and enjoy a variety of luxury goods, creating an elite class that is invested in the survival of the regime. This loyalty program is underpinned by a culture of fear. The regime employs various fear tactics, including public executions, labor camps, and pervasive surveillance, to instill a sense of dread among the populace. The message is clear: disloyalty to the regime is met with severe punishment. This culture of fear is reinforced by the regime's control over information. North Koreans are shielded from the outside world, fed a steady diet of state-controlled media that paints the regime in a favorable light and demonizes the West, particularly the United States. This information control serves to consolidate the regime's narrative and suppress dissenting voices. Lastly, the regime maintains its power through economic incentives for the elite. While the majority of North Koreans live in poverty, the regime ensures that the elite class enjoys a comfortable lifestyle. This economic disparity serves to maintain the status quo, as the privileged elite have much to lose if the regime were to fall. Together, these pillars of power, loyalty programs, fear tactics, control over information, and economic incentives for the elite, form the bedrock of the regime's control. They serve to maintain the dictator's authority, ensuring the survival of the regime amidst the harshest of challenges. Every dictator, every regime has a distinct blueprint. The Kim dynasty, with its succession of iron-fisted rulers, is no exception. The psychological and political mechanisms they employed to maintain control over North Korea are both complex and chilling. The regime's pillars of power, loyalty programs, fear tactics, control over information, and economic incentives for the elite, are all part of a carefully constructed machine designed to uphold the dictator's authority. The human cost of such leadership is staggering. Millions live in poverty, while a privileged few enjoy the spoils of the regime's favor. The society is isolated, its people shielded from the world outside, fed a steady diet of state-controlled media that paints a warped picture of reality. The challenges of change are immense in such a society, yet change is not impossible. As we move forward, it's crucial to remember that every regime, no matter how powerful, is not invincible. The future of North Korea is uncertain, but it's in our hands to stay informed and engage in meaningful discussions. We invite you to explore more about authoritarian regimes and share your thoughts on the future of North Korea in the comments below. The death of the great leader did not spell the end of the dynasty. Instead, it marked the beginning of a new era under Kim Jong-il. With the passing of the torch, the second act of this dark theater began. Kim Jong-il, the son of the first dictator, took the reins of the Hermit Kingdom. To consolidate his power, Kim Jong-il employed a strategic and pervasive use of propaganda. He spun tales of his divinity and invincibility, painting himself as a demigod in the eyes of the populace. From stories of his supernatural birth to claims of his unrivaled genius, the propaganda machine worked tirelessly to create a cult of personality around the new leader. Kim Jong-il also introduced the Jong-un policy, or the military-first policy. This policy prioritized the military above all else, allocating the lion's share of the nation's resources to the armed forces. In a nation already grappling with scarcity, this move further drained the resources available for the common people, leading to widespread poverty and hardship. Meanwhile, North Korea was hit by a devastating famine. The arduous march, as it came to be known, resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of North Koreans. The economic crisis that followed further crippled the nation, plunging it into a state of severe destitution. This period also marked the intensification of North Korea's international isolation. As the nation continued its pursuit of nuclear weapons, sanctions and diplomatic pressures from the international community increased. Yet, Kim Jong-il remained unyielding, choosing the path of isolation and militarization over integration and diplomacy. Through it all, the nation became a fortress under Kim Jong-il's rule. While the people suffered, the regime thrived, sustained by a potent mix of propaganda, military might, and the iron will of a dictator. Under Kim Jong-il, North Korea became a fortress nation, driven by military might and shrouded in secrecy. In 2011, a new face emerged from the shadows. Kim Jong-un, the youngest son, assumed the mantle of leadership. A fresh figure, seemingly modern, yet continuing to wield the same iron fist. The transition of power was swift and unchallenged, a testament to the enduring strength of the totalitarian regime. This new leader immediately set about solidifying his power. His tactics were reminiscent of his father's and grandfather's, yet with a chilling modern twist. His reign saw purges and executions designed to remove any potential threats to his rule. Among the most notorious of these was the execution of his own uncle, a clear message to any who dared to challenge his authority. However, Kim Jong-un's reign wasn't merely a continuation of the past. His ambitions were grander, his vision more global. The world watched with bated breath as he embarked on an aggressive quest for nuclear weapons. His determination to position North Korea as a nuclear power sent shockwaves through the international community, escalating tensions to an unprecedented level. But despite the fear and isolation, Kim Jong-un pushed for modernization within his borders. He championed technological development and even dabbled in diplomacy, a stark contrast to his predecessors. Yet this seeming openness was a veneer, a facade veiling a continued commitment to control and oppression. His rule has been marked by a paradox. On one hand, there's an undeniable push towards modernization. On the other, there's an ironclad grip on power, an unwavering commitment to the dictatorial rule that has defined the nation for decades. As we delve deeper into the mind of this enigmatic leader, we see a complex mix of ambition, fear, and a relentless pursuit of power. His reign has been characterized by a dichotomy of progress and persecution, a paradox of modernization and control, development and oppression. In the end, the new face of North Korea only served to reinforce the same old iron fist. What drives a dictator? What lies behind the iron curtain of control and power? These questions lead us into a labyrinth of psychological intricacies that define a dictator. At the heart of dictatorial rule, we find a potent cocktail of fear, control, and personality cult. Fear, the most primal human emotion, is a dictator's most potent weapon and a key tool for maintaining power. It's not just fear of the dictator himself, but a pervasive, omnipresent dread seeping into every aspect of society. This fear is meticulously cultivated, fed, and manipulated, resulting in a populace that is perpetually on edge, forever looking over their shoulders. Control, the second element, is as ubiquitous as the air we breathe. Every facet of life, every decision, every thought is influenced, guided, or outright dictated. This control extends beyond the physical realm into the ideological. where a personality cult is meticulously constructed. The dictator is not just a ruler, they are an omnipotent, infallible deity, a personification of the state itself. This personality cult serves two purposes. Firstly, it fortifies the dictator's image, making them appear unassailable. Secondly, it creates a psychological dependence in the people, making them believe that, without the dictator, the state would crumble. Now let's delve deeper into the dictator's mind. Here, isolation and paranoia reign supreme. The isolation is both physical, as the dictator is distanced from the people they rule, and psychological, as they exist in a world few can comprehend. This isolation breeds intense paranoia. Every whisper becomes a potential threat, every ally a potential traitor. This paranoia shapes the dictator's decisions, turning them into a high-stakes game where every move is calculated, every consequence weighed. And so, we arrive at the chilling heart of our exploration. A dictator's mind is a labyrinth of fear and control, where every decision is a calculated move in a high-stakes game of power. The stakes, the survival of the regime, the continuation of control, and the preservation of the personality cult. The game, the endless dance of dictatorship, as old as power itself. It's a dance that continues to play out behind the iron curtain of control and power in the mind of the dictator. As the world watches, the future of North Korea remains a question mark. The nation, shrouded in secrecy and controlled by an iron fist, continues to baffle and concern the international community. In the heart of the Hermit Kingdom, ongoing human rights issues persist. A significant portion of the population lives in fear, with freedom of speech, assembly, and other basic rights being suppressed. Dissent is not tolerated and punishments are severe. The regime's grip on its people is unyielding, a chilling testament to the power of dictatorial rule. The nuclear threat, too, looms large. North Korea's nuclear capabilities and missile technology continue to advance, despite international sanctions and diplomatic efforts aimed at denuclearization. This advancement raises the stakes, not only for the Korean peninsula, but also for the broader international community. Economically, North Korea faces immense challenges. The country's self-imposed isolation, coupled with international sanctions, has resulted in a stagnant economy. While the regime boasts of self-reliance, the reality is a population grappling with poverty and food insecurity. Looking ahead, the future scenarios are as complex as they are uncertain. Will North Korea open up to the world, embracing change and reform? Or will it continue down the path of isolation, maintaining its aggressive nuclear stance and oppressive regime? The implications of these potential scenarios are profound, extending beyond North Korea's borders and impacting global security and stability. In the midst of these uncertainties, one thing remains clear: the resilience of the North Korean people. Despite the oppressive regime, they continue to live, dream, and endure. They navigate their daily lives with resourcefulness and tenacity, a testament to the human spirit's ability to adapt and persevere. In the shadow of the supreme leader, the people of North Korea continue to live, dream, and endure. Their story is yet to be fully told.